During my upbringing in Lebanon, I was always amazed by the beauty of the sunrise and the ocean appearing from my apartment balcony. The thought of people all knowing each other in the town I grew up in, Awkad, I thought that Lebanon was the most beautiful country in the world. I was a kid with no worries, living the life that every child deserves to have. Now, when I was a kid, I wasn't aware that the government would impose acts that would disrupt communication amongst the Lebanese people. However, as I grew up, learned, and matured more, I started to notice the numerous acts the government committed. I first started to learn about the government and the ins and outs of it in my civics class, and the history of the government and what led to its current formation. This allowed me to get a basic idea of the government. However, I still wasn't invested enough in it, but that soon changed thereafter. When I came to the United States, I was very much homesick for the first couple of weeks. To cope with that, I used to call my friends back home and would ask them what's going on in Lebanon. I was taken aback after what they said, so I decided to dig deeper and do my own research. During the parliamentary elections on May 2018, many people protested the government and the leaders ruling it, yelling out curse words to them and shaming them to what they did to their beautiful country. Now, instead of this eliciting a positive reaction, the opposite happened. Lebanese protesters were met with persecution for peaceful speech, and detainees continued to report cruel treatment from officers of the law. Furthermore, Lebanon's lack of waste management has led to millions of trash bags and other unsanitary items to be left with on the streets, causing massive health effects over local citizens. In terms of women's rights, women still face discrimination under 15 separate religion-based laws, and child marriage and marital rape is still legal in Lebanon. For education, more than 300,000 Syrian refugees have been denied access to it since their parents were not able to afford for transport, school fees, lack of linguistic support, and more. More than 1.5 million Syrian refugees have been denied access to education, healthcare, or work. And then, on October 14, 2019, the government implemented a tax on essential goods such as tobacco, petrol, and most importantly, voice calls through WhatsApp. This crushed and infuriated the people of Lebanon and took away the one thing that made them forget about everything that was happening in their country: communicating with their loved ones across the globe. Now, even though the government did repeal the act after several days, this would not have been possible if the Lebanese people did not vigorously protest against this act. Now, I could go on and on about the continuous acts that the government implemented on the Lebanese people, but I think you guys have heard enough tonight, and so have the people of Lebanon. In recent times, the Lebanese people have been vigorously protesting for a change in government to happen, and something finally did. The Prime Minister of Lebanon, Saad al-Hariri, has recently stepped down, and people were given a sigh of relief. But the people want other legislative bodies to resign from their respective occupations. Though the answer is still not clear as to what holds for Lebanon and the future of its government, they are still continuing to fight to create change. One of the biggest ways to expedite this process is by informing people about what's happening in Lebanon and to other countries around the world, such as North Korea, Somalia, South Sudan, and more. After the Lebanese protests began, many big cities such as Paris, Sydney, Miami, Chile, Hong Kong, and Catalonia began setting up their own protests and efforts to help fight the Lebanese government and to create change. With all, communication has allowed Lebanon and other respective countries to fight off their respective governments and to create change. Through acts of education, courageous protest, and communication, we are inspired not to give up, but to stand up instead. Thank you all and have a great night.